The history of cinema is littered with a wide array of wacky urban legends involving everything from magical curses to subliminal messages. Unfortunately, a lot of the movie urban legends getting passed around are pretty easily proven false. These are just a few movie urban legends everyone believed. You know your friend who claims their grandma lived in Texas next to the house of cannibalistic killers who supposedly inspired Tobe Hooper's Texas Chainsaw Massacre? You might have believed Grandma's horrifying story, since both the original film and its 2003 remake advertised themselves with the chilling tagline, "Inspired by true events." But there's one big snag. The true story hogwash was mostly just a marketing stunt. Sorry to break the fantasy, but Leatherface was fictional. The twisted family of cannibals was made up, and none of this super fictionalized crap ever happened in Texas. As Snopes explains, Hooper loosely based the idea of a killer wearing human flesh on a real-life Wisconsin man named Ed Gein. While Gein did kill at least 2 women, he mostly dug up female corpses, wore their skin, and/or fashioned it into furniture. Some of these deeply disturbing traits made it into the film, but keep in mind, Gein also inspired Norman Bates of Psycho fame and Silence of the Lambs' Buffalo Bill.
It rubs the lotion on its skin or else it gets the hose again.
So, if Texas Chainsaw gets to say it's based on true events, then so should those other obviously fictional bloodbaths. Hey 90s kids, do you remember Shazam? No, not the DC Comics superhero played by a weirdly buff version of the dude from Chuck. We're talking about the family-friendly comedy film starring Sinbad as a magical genie who is reawakened from his slumber just in time to help out some contemporary kids. The answer should be no, because no such movie ever existed. Nonetheless, a loyal contingent of people will tell you otherwise, swearing up and down that they loved this film when they were in elementary school. In all honesty, they're probably just misremembering Kazam, a Shaquille O'Neal flick with an identical storyline, but they're more likely to blame alternate universes, Hollywood cover-ups, or the so-called Mandela effect than the failings of human memory. Sinbad has always maintained that the film never happened, while confessing to IndieWire that he'd totally flip out if a tape somehow ever got uncovered.
Wow, you're a genie too.
That's probably why on April Fool's Day 2017, he and College Humor teamed up to make a real version, nearly cracking the internet in half. For some reason, a lot of people have ridiculed the fact that Matt Damon and Ben Affleck won an Oscar for their Good Will Hunting screenplay. Despite plenty of evidence that Damon was working on the script for years beforehand, conspiracy theorists have argued that they stole the script from the late William Goldman. Goldman himself satirized the whole thing on several occasions, but according to The Telegraph, his self-proclaimed total contribution to the film was about as microscopic as it gets. When Damon and Affleck were first shopping the script around, it contained a bunch of scenes in which the government tried to hire the math kid for covert work. Princess Bride director Rob Reiner advised them to drop the action movie aspects, and Goldman said he told them he agreed with Reiner. And that was that. Boom. Done. Superman can bounce death rays off his chest, but the men who've played him are as vulnerable as anyone else. For example, there's George Reeves, who portrayed the hero in the 1950s, but was later found dead of a possibly self-inflicted gunshot wound.
Who killed the Man of Steel? Was it suicide or murder?
Following that was the equally beloved Christopher Reeve, who in 1995 was left tragically paralyzed by a horseback riding incident. According to biography, the events that befell these men led some to declare it the, quote, Superman curse, wherein all who become intimately connected to the character later face some form of personal kryptonite in their real lives. Often, curse believers will also include the misfortunes that occurred in the lives of Superman creators Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, as well as the hardships that impacted supporting actors like Margot Kidder and Marlon Brando. Well, lots of bad things happen to lots of people, but that doesn't mean it's all magically connected. Frankly, the Superman curse pretty conveniently ignores all the Superman actors and writers and artists and co-stars who haven't faced such immense tragedy in their lives. What about Henry Cavill, or Brandon Routh, or Dean Cain, Tom Welling? Anyone? Yeah, they were probably left out because these guys don't fit into the tidy narrative. It's time to put this fable to bed. In the classic 007 movie Goldfinger, the villain's secretary, Jill Masterson, played by Shirley Eaton, falls in love with Sean Connery's James Bond, betrays her evil boss, and winds up getting killed for it. She is murdered by being painted gold, an action that causes her death due to what Bond calls, quote, skin suffocation. Now, characters die in movies all the time, and nobody thinks the actors are really being killed. But for some reason, though, the BBC says that decades of viewers have believed that Shirley Eaton eventually kicked the bucket because all that gold paint poisoned or suffocated her in some way.
Stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, no, that didn't happen. According to the Smithsonian, Eaton was still alive and writing memoirs by 2014. And furthermore, the whole idea that a person could die from being painted up is yet another myth. Guess what that means? Not only is Shirley Eaton alive, but her character might very well be too. While the original 1954 Godzilla was a dark allegory for the atomic bomb, the giant radioactive lizard had become pure cheese by the time he faced off with King Kong in 1962. By all rights, Godzilla should have stomped Kong flat, but the original film ends with Kong walking into the water alone and being declared victorious, an announcement that ignores the fact that Godzilla lives in the water. Honestly, the big reptile probably just figured, screw it, I'll take a nap and wait till this fool goes back to Skull Island. Anyhow, since the movie came out, there have long been rumors that Kong's victory was added to the American version, while the original Japanese film has local anti-hero Godzilla winning instead. Not so, says Snopes. While the American version of the movie did splice in lots of dumb new sequences featuring American actors, the ending was the same in both versions. All the Japanese release includes that the American version doesn't is an additional Godzilla roar, which is about all this urban legend has to support it. Ooh boy, this is a biggie. Conspiracy theories about the moon landing being a big ol' hoax go back to, well, the moon landing. This one's even appeared on Mythbusters. That's how you know an urban legend's overstayed its welcome.
What conspiracy theorists say is that he's too well lit. You can see him clearly, yet he's in this black shadow of the LEM.
If you honestly believe NASA filmed the whole thing on a soundstage, well, it's your prerogative to be wrong. But probably the wackiest theory ever is the notion that the guy who directed the whole shebang was 2001 mastermind Stanley Kubrick. Silly as the concept of Kubrick bossing around Neil and Buzz might be, the most intricate conspiracy theory ever put to paper, or, typed out on one of those tinfoil hat forums, is the story of how his 1980 film The Shining is supposedly a veiled apology from Kubrick featuring lots of clues. For example, some say Jack Torrance's mental breakdown symbolizes Kubrick's own guilt about his contributions to the faked moon landing. Other hints include Danny's Apollo sweater, or that Room 237 is supposed to be the number of the soundstage where Kubrick did the government's dirty work. Clever as this all is, it's clearly a load of hooey. Nonetheless, countless people have harassed Kubrick's daughter Vivian about it, to the point where she finally went on Twitter not only to debunk the theory, but also to point out that the whole thing is rather disrespectful to her father's memory. When new technologies arise, people get weirded out. Seriously, imagine telling someone 30 years ago that they'd have a computer in their pocket. Talk about mind-blowing. One of the most popular examples of the rubes of the past getting freaked out by futuristic tech is the old tale that, way back when, an audience sat in a movie theater for the first time until a train came rushing at them from the screen so realistically that they ran away screaming. Amusing as it might be to poke fun at your ancestors, Atlas Obscura points out that there's no record of this incident ever happening. The train movie in question was probably a 50-second 1896 French film titled Le Bruit d'un train en gare de la Ciotat. And most likely, the notion of foolish people going ballistic over a grainy black and white train is rooted in classist attitudes. It's possible that some upper-class snobs would make themselves feel superior by repeating the BS story of how those dumb working-class people were scared of the train movie. By 1901, the film The Countryman and the Cinematograph depicted a rural man spazzing out at footage of a train, likely cementing the myth in popular culture. There are probably just as many conspiracy theories about the Wizard of Oz as there are bricks in the Yellow Brick Road, according to ABC News. While the way that Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon syncs up to the film will never stop being eerie, if coincidental, one urban legend that really needs to be retired is the sad tale of the suicidal Munchkin actor who supposedly felt such an intense, unrequited crush on Judy Garland that he hanged himself on the movie set. Generations of viewers have pointed out the swinging shadow of his corpse as proof of this story. The problem? That shadow is actually a bird, not a munchkin. As Snopes explains, the Oz production was mostly filmed on sound stages. To make the forest seem more outdoorsy, the studio borrowed some avian actors from the zoo. and one of these, either an emu or a crane, spread its wings during the infamous shot, forever cementing the Academy Award-worthy performance as a dead Munchkin silhouette. If there's one thing that every comic fan agrees about, it's that Heath Ledger was absolutely astonishing as the Joker. He was so good, in fact, that he completely redefined the character for an entire generation.
Let's put a smile on that face.
Ledger threw himself into the part so deeply and so openly that an urban legend popped up that his tragic death, caused by an accidental sleeping pill overdose, was the result of him getting so overwhelmed by the Joker's horrifying, chaotic persona that he became sleepless, anxious, and depressed. In reality, though, Ledger loved playing the Joker, according to his sister Kate. He was having a ball with the role, The Guardian reports, and while his descriptions of struggling with insomnia happened to surface right around the time of his death, the truth is that he had struggled with sleeping problems for many years beforehand. Ledger's method-acting approach to the world's most infamous comic book supervillain is certainly something to admire, but the notion that this very role caused his heartbreaking death simply doesn't line up with the facts. If you or anyone you know is having suicidal thoughts, please call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK, 1-800-273-8255.